Hello and welcome to Jamaica Magazine. I'm your host, Theodore Henry. Coming up in today's show, we continue our look at Prime Minister Holness's budget presentation. All this and more, but first, the news.
Water is precious. So we encourage everyone to practice the 4 R's of water conservation. Always remember to reduce your use of water wherever possible. Replace water wasting devices with water savings devices. Reuse water wherever possible. And wherever leaks are found, please repair them and repair them quickly.
Don't delay. Practice the 4 R's of water conservation today.
Good day, I'm Stephen McHugh, and this is your JIS News for Tuesday, March 28, 2023. The Appropriation Bill 2023, which outlines how the government will spend its $1 trillion budget, was approved by the Senate on Friday. The figure was outlined in the 2023-24 estimates of expenditure. The bill will authorize expenditure and allocation of funds to the various services and commitments of the government. Government is proposing to spend $665.7 billion on non-debt recurrent expenditure, $75.3 billion on capital projects, and $280.6 billion on debt servicing. The bill was piloted in the Upper House by Minister of Industry, Investment and Commerce, Senator Aubin Hill.
The fiscal program aims to support the objective of reducing the public debt and debt servicing costs, thereby creating fiscal space to facilitate growth-inducing expenditure.
Senator Hill points out that achieving the required fiscal balance and the corresponding primary balance remain a priority of the government. These, he indicates, are the operational instruments being utilized to attain a public debt of no more than 60% of GDP by the end of March 2028.
The fiscal surplus is budgeted at $8.66 billion or 0.3% of GDP, while a primary surplus of $145.24 billion, equivalent to 5.5% of GDP, is projected for fiscal 23-24.
Additionally, Senator Hill says revenue and grants projection for the fiscal year, which begins on April 1, is $896 billion, with tax revenue projected to account for 92%. Prime Minister Andrew Holness has called on the newly formed Constitutional Reform Committee to make public education a main priority. Mr. Holness, who was speaking at a briefing with the team last Wednesday, says this is important to the process going forward.
There is a process, and a large part of that process is putting together a referendum, which the outcome of which is not guaranteed. It's not known. And therefore, public education, public engagement, and a consistent narrative is going to be so important in ensuring that the public participates at the level required, meaning the turnout that is required, and that there is an understanding of the process, that people know why they are voting and what it is that will be achieved by their vote.
Mr. Holness says part of the committee's responsibility will be to assist with the design of the referendum process. It includes drafting the questions that will be placed on the ballot and educating the public on the integral role they will play in Jamaica's transition to a republic. The Prime Minister has pledged his commitment to the process.
As Prime Minister, I take direct ownership of the reform of the Constitution of Jamaica. My continued pledge to Jamaica is effective governance supported by conscientious, thoughtful, efficient, and effectively crafted policy in the best interest of Jamaica.
The 12-member committee is co-chaired by the Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, Marlene Malahoo Fort, and Ambassador Rocky Mead. The Ministry of Tourism is conducting public consultations ahead of presenting its Destination Assurance Framework and Strategy to Parliament for approval as a white paper. The policy will focus on issues such as visitor harassment, public order, and proper solid waste management practices. Portfolio Minister Edmund Bartlett had the first set of consultations with tourism stakeholders from Hanover and Westmoreland last week in Negril. Minister Bartlett says the destination assurance policy is to deliver to visitors the promise of a safe, secure, and seamless experience.
We want you to appreciate that building this destination assurance is a signal driver for tourism development and improvement in your area.
The tourism minister says Jamaica will be the first country in the world to have a destination assurance policy.
So we established a team across the island that we call Destination Assurance Counselors. And we established a destination manager for each destination within Jamaica. And on these destination advisory councils we have persons from all these touch points I mentioned: health, security, fire, environmental, you name it. And they would meet once a month to look at all these factors that are now important to make the destination safe and secure.
11 new motor vehicles have been added to the fleet of the Department of Correctional Services, DCS, as part of measures to bolster its operational capacity. The units were acquired at a total cost of $84.5 million. They include 4 sport utility vehicles, 2 pickup vans, 1 truck, 1 panel van, and 3 minivans. The vehicles will be used to transport staff members and inmates to health facilities and other locations, as well as deliver food and other items across the DCS network. State Minister for National Security Xavier Main says the acquisition is part of the overall modernization of the DCS to improve service delivery. Minister Main was inspecting the vehicles at the Tower Street Adult Correctional Center in Kingston recently.
The institutional arrangement is something that we have been looking at as part of the overall transformation. Important in all of this is mobility, and we are here today as part of the that component of mobility where we are adding vehicles, because what we do here, mobility is critical to the efficient operation of the department.
The addition of the 11 new vehicles brings the total DCS fleet to 107. The department comprises 7 adult correctional centers, 1 adult remand center, 4 juvenile centers, and 17 community service or probation offices. Director General of the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, Richard Thompson, is imploring Jamaicans to continue implementing major earthquake preparedness measures, especially when building infrastructure. He was addressing a recent JIS think tank.
From the engineering standpoint, we have to ensure that we're hardening our infrastructure and that we are building earthquake-ready infrastructure, especially our buildings. We have seen where we have had a proliferation of high-rise buildings in country. So these buildings have to be earthquake ready.
Mr. Thompson says factoring earthquake readiness is particularly important in the planning and development approval process.
In looking at our engineering platform, we have gone to a more modern code system to ensure that our buildings and our infrastructure are properly engineered to withstand earthquake, given that the country is prone to earthquake.
And finally, the Jamaica Cultural Development Commission, JCDC, is highlighting the coconut as its focus ingredient for this year's Culinary Arts competition. Pointing out that there are many traditional foods made with the coconut, Acting Executive Director of the JCDC, Marjorie Leyden-Curtin, says the Commission is seeking to promote creative dishes using the local produce.
We want to see what unique things you can create this year in the culinary, and that is the coconut, the good old coconut. We know the traditional things it can do. We want you to enter and show us some creative, new things that we can do with coconut.
Mrs. Leyden-Curtin was speaking at a recent JIS think tank. Participants can enter the culinary competition in 7 categories: batters and doughs, wedding and celebration cakes, traditional Jamaican dishes, knife skills technique, recipe writing, preserves and condiments, and wines and liquors. Persons may register and submit entries online via the Commission's website, jcdc.gov.jm, or visit any of the 14 JCDC parish offices island-wide. The deadline for entries is Friday, April 28, 2023. Participants will compete for gold, silver, and bronze medals, merit certificates, cash incentives, and trophies from sponsors. And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Stephen McHugh. Thanks for watching.
The latest now on all that has happened in the office of the Prime Minister this past week.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness names the Constitutional Reform Committee, and we continue to highlight development plans from his contribution to the recent national budget debate. I'm Vaughn Davis, and you're watching Jamaica House Weekly. On Wednesday, the Prime Minister called a press conference to introduce the 12 newly named members of the Constitutional Reform Committee. The team, which is expected to hold its first meeting this week, has been put in place to ensure Jamaica's smooth transition to a republic.
There may be the view that it is a straightforward and simple task of just changing the name of the country from that of a constitutional monarch to a republic. That is not the case. There are many legal steps that we have to go through, and there is the matter of a referendum, the outcome of which no one can predict.
The Constitutional Reform Committee is being co-chaired by Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs Marlene Malahou-Fort and Ambassador Rocky Mead. Other members include Attorney General Dr. Derek McCoy, President of the Senate Tom Tavares Finson, and Senators Ransford Braham and Donna Scott Motley. Also serving are Member of Parliament Anthony Hilton, experts on constitutional affairs Professor Richard Albert and Dr. Lloyd Barnett, as well as Consultant Counsel Hugh Small. The committee is also comprised of Dr. David Henry, representing the Faith-Based Society, Dr. Nadine Spence for Civil Society, Youth Advisor Sujay Boswell, and Chair of the National Committee on Reparations Lalita Davis Mattis. Christopher Harper will serve as liaison officer.
Their job is significant, and I thank all of them for giving of their time and effort, knowledge and guidance to the process. I am confident that we will be able to meet the ambitious timelines that have been set, and that we will make one step further in redefining who we are as a country and as a sovereign people.
Coming out of the Prime Minister's recent budget debate presentation, it was announced that the National Commission for Violence Prevention is developing a 10-year evidence-based national action plan on crime and violence.
Once we have this national plan, then we will be able to properly fund and deploy violence interrupters right across the country, psychologists and social workers right across the country, to be able to treat with the real problems, not just the symptoms which we see expressed on the surface as crime and violence, but the real problem of hate, of aggression, of low self-esteem, of inability to socio-emotionally regulate, of lack of respect for the inviolability of the physical person, the body of the person, and a lack of respect for life.
A report from the Commission is expected in the upcoming fiscal year. The strategy will set up a level of governance and best practices that will activate a full national mobilization to control and reduce violence. Turning his attention to development, Prime Minister Holness says the Port Authority of Jamaica (PAJ) is exploring measures to expand the storage area and reduce congestion at the Port of Kingston. The PAJ is now in negotiations with the concession operator of the Port of Kingston, Kingston Freeport Terminal Limited, to lease sections of the westlands between the port and the Portmore Causeway. The Port Authority has also developed plans to build out more near-port logistics assembly and light manufacturing facilities. Tinson Pen is now the only land available to facilitate the near-port logistics expansion.
I have directed the Port Authority, the Airports Authority, and the NWA to develop a comprehensive plan to enable the use of the Tinson Pen lands for this purpose.
Mr. Holness says this will involve the transfer of operations of the Tinson Pen Aerodrome to the Norman Manley International Airport. Marcus Garvey Drive will also be realigned to run behind the Tinson Pen lands, releasing approximately 100 acres of land to be seamlessly incorporated into the curtilage of the port.
These two developments, along with the ongoing work on the Caymanas Special Economic Zone, will set the stage for a doubling of the capacity of the Port of Kingston and fulfill the shared vision of Jamaica becoming a logistics hub.
Meanwhile, work is well advanced on the construction of the Port Royal Museum. Completion is projected for the end of May 2023.
Following that, the selected operators will build out the museum interior and displays. It is anticipated that the facility will be operational by December 2023.
And bids submitted for the construction of the new Houses of Parliament complex are currently being evaluated. Prime Minister Holness says the intention is to break ground in the first quarter of fiscal year 2023-24 and start construction by the second quarter. June 2025 is the estimated completion timeline.
The new Parliament building will become the fulcrum of development to transform downtown Kingston. Madam Speaker, I will be declaring the Parliament construction a national strategic project to signal the importance and priority nature of the project.
The Urban Development Corporation UDC will manage the construction of the new Houses of Parliament building at National Heroes Park. And this is where we close out Jamaica House Weekly. We'll be back next week with more stories coming out of the office of the Prime Minister.
If between January 1 and December 31, you are a parliamentarian or public official in receipt of total emoluments of $3.5 million or above, or you are appointed or perform the functions of a position listed in the Jamaica Gazette, December 14, 2022, regarding the Integrity Commission Act, you are required to file a statutory declaration of assets, liabilities, and income as at December 31. What to file? You are required to declare all balances and interest in all assets, liabilities, and income received by you, your spouse, and children below the age of 18, whether living in Jamaica or abroad. It should be noted that a person who knowingly makes a false statement in a statutory declaration may be liable to a fine not exceeding $2 million or to a term of imprisonment not exceeding 2 years. The Integrity Commission has implemented its zero-tolerance policy. All declarants are to submit all outstanding statutory declarations. Failure to submit a statutory declaration may attract a fine of not exceeding $500,000 or to a term of imprisonment not exceeding 6 months. The Integrity Commission has decentralized the collection of statutory declarations. Submit your statutory declarations for the previous calendar year securely within your organization on or before March 31 of the following year. Here's how. Firstly, complete your statutory declaration. Ensure you have entered the correct as-at date, for example, December 31, 2022. NA or C attached is never an appropriate response. Use none and list all required balances. Copy or print additional pages where necessary. Ensure all the sections are signed. A justice of the peace is required to validate your signature by signing, entering the date, location, and affixing their embossed seal. Attach the relevant supporting documents. ATM printouts are not accepted. You then proceed to your in-house collection point. Collect a statutory declaration envelope and security seal. Place the required information on the statutory declaration envelope, seal the envelope, and affix the security seal. Deposit the secure envelope in the Integrity Commission branded collection container or with your designated officer on or before March 31. Finally, enter your name and date of submission on the Integrity Commission log sheet. The designated officer should deposit the white copy of the log sheet in the collection container on April 1, retain the yellow copy for the files, and facilitate the submission of the collection container to the Integrity Commission. The Integrity Commission will register your statutory declaration and send you a receipt by email on or before May 13. After submission, the statutory declaration is examined for due completion and accuracy. Where the Integrity Commission is satisfied that the statutory declaration has been duly completed, certification is done and an advisory issued to the declarant. Submit your statutory declaration completely and accurately and get on the path to certification. For more information, visit our office on the 4th floor of the Sagicor Sigma building at 63 to 67 Knutsford Boulevard, Kingston 5, or give us a call at 876-968-6227 or 876-960-0470. The following is an excerpt from the 2023-2024 budget presentation by Prime Minister the Most Honourable Andrew Holness.
The government has already undertaken a comprehensive review of our laws in relation to land ownership and has made amendments to the Registration of Titles, Cadastral Mapping and Tenure Clarification Special Provisions Act in 2020-21, which has enabled the processing of matters under systematic land registration via an adjudication process. Last year, we issued 4,225 titles under our systematic registration program and an additional 1,723 titles under programs of the NLA. This is a total of 5,948 titles issued last year. Up to February of this financial year, we have already issued a total 4,331 titles, which means approximately 10,000 Jamaicans over the last 2 years who before now had no titles for their land have received their titles. They now have a greater sense of ownership and prosperity from the seed that we have planted, which is the reform of titling. I just want it to be clear that we are not the government of Chaka Chaka. We want our place to look modern, streamlined, clean, resilient, transparent, aesthetically pleasing, robust and durable. But we also want our development to be equitable. So we are making reforms to ground ownership of property. Once people have ownership of property, they usually take better care of it. And we are making reforms to manage how people get access to ownership and how we develop our infrastructure.
Over the past 30 years, Jamaica has successively failed to successfully arrest and prosecute persons who were allegedly criminally responsible during the FinSAC era, neither those criminally responsible for Cash Plus and Olint, Worldwise, and other such schemes. Similarly, persons allegedly responsible for public sector frauds over much of this period have similarly escaped punishment, regularly meted out to others. With that as our historical context, the SSL fraud has touched especially raw nerves. A nerve that represents the reservoir of distrust that has developed based on what many believe to be the historical Jamaican experience of one law for some and another law for others. A nerve that captures the wells of suspicion that white-collar crimes are processed and treated differently from other crimes. A nerve that characterizes the deep pool of cynicism in our country where there is sometimes a belief that the real truth is artificially suppressed and nothing ever really changes. These waters of distrust, suspicion, and cynicism are existential threats to our society. It will take time to drain the system of these, but we must begin now. This time must be different. Let me repeat what I have said and what the most honorable Prime Minister has said. There will be full transparency in this matter. No stone will be left unturned. SSL was a relatively small securities dealer, and its problems do not pose a systemic risk to the financial system. There is therefore no need to panic. The financial sector is strong and well capitalized. The financial sector survived the global financial crisis. It survived 2 debt exchanges. It survived the COVID-19 economic shock, the inflation crisis, and it even managed to grow through all of this. Not only is the financial sector strong, it is also resilient. More specifically, the securities dealers industry remains a strong and critical pillar upon which our country, our economy, and our investing public depend. Despite this most unfortunate development, Jamaica's financial sector remains strong. To take the Jamaican financial sector to the next level, the government of Jamaica will review the penalty regimes in the Securities Act, the Banking Act, the Insurance Act, and the Pensions Act. We will stiffen the penalties for white-collar crime in the financial sector.
We have come to the end of another magazine program. I do hope you had a wonderful time. Should you want a recap of today's show or any other program, please visit our website at www.jis.gov.jm. Until next time, I'm Theodore Henry. Do take care.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.